Hey, I thought I'd talk about my thoughts for Bayonetta 2. Right now it is the 8th. In about 4.5 hours they're going to do the Nintendo Direct, and a lot of us are hoping we're going to get some information on Bayonetta 3. I was never really able to really comment on the complaints that people had about this game simply because I never had a Wii U. The only access I ever had to this game before the Switch port was playing at my local gaming cafe, which closed shortly after I started the game. I think I got to chapter 10, so a little over halfway through, around the halfway point, and I was never really able to truly finish it. And now that I've finished it, I can definitely agree with all the stuff that people are saying is wrong with this game. Like, there's just a lot of small things that they changed with the combat that just make it not as fluid of an experience as it used to be. Now, I have most of the stuff unlocked. I have pretty much all the costumes. I'm only missing the Chain Chomp and Rodan. I have every other weapon. I have pretty much all the accessories as well. But the problem with this game is just, you'll notice when I'm playing through this witch trial, is there's just too much reliance on the witch time mechanic. And the Wicked Weaves are not satisfying anymore. And a lot of the enemies just, they don't stagger, or they don't react as much to Wicked Weaves anymore. Which means that there's a very heavy reliance on the Umbran Climax mechanic, which is actually pretty satisfying, but I feel like they should have maybe balanced it a little better so that the other elements of the combat were better. Like, these enemies stagger just fine, because they are small, kind of trash mob equivalents. But like anything else past the trash mobs, you can't really juggle or stagger them at all, outside of Witch Time. Like, these enemies, you can kind of just have fun with them, but like anything else past them, you can't. Which really limits what you can do with the combat. Like these guys, for instance, I won't be able to do anything to them. You notice those big guys, basically I kept using Witch Time. With the Bracelet of Time and the Auruna Whip, you can actually pretty much stagger anything, or control anything. Like, if I try to launch this guy otherwise, he's gonna block. The humanoid bosses are definitely the worst. Basically, you cannot damage them at all outside of Witch Time, which just makes things really limited in general. They are the major complaint pretty much everyone has that everyone agrees on. Some people don't agree with this game, you know, not being as mechanically robust and deep as the first game, but everyone agrees that the humanoid bosses suck. Which is pretty rare, you know, there's people that, you know, think that Ninja Gaiden games are okay for having basically a bunch of moves that are useless. But with this game, everyone hates the humanoid bosses. You notice right there, even an attempt to combo them on the ground makes them kind of rear back, and it can be kind of hard to see sometimes. There's a lot of little elements like that in this game, like sometimes you'll stagger some of the larger enemies, and they will just straight up like parry out of it, even though they're in hit stun. Thankfully the Bracelet of Time and the whip are really broken, and you can just do stuff like this to most enemies. So I'll go ahead and I'll show a humanoid boss really quick. Now, I have to give a disclaimer, I'm not very good at this game. I only have like 15 hours in it, which is basically nothing for a game like this, but I'll show some of what I'm talking about here. So let me go into Tag Climax. The issue should become pretty apparent. Alright, let's see. Need to find one of the humanoids. It's kind of hard to tell from the cards. Ah, here we go. So if I put this on the hardest difficulty, basically what will happen is your Umbran Climax barely works on them. Like, they dodge pretty much every move. The only way you can hit them is in Witch Time, which just makes things really slow and boring and frustrating. I mean, you should be able to see how much they're going to dodge here, especially since I'm playing as Jean and I can't easily access Witch Time. Also, a lot of their moves have almost no startup, like that one. Now, for a fight with this much health, feel like that really kind of eats away at your health bar. Like, you can see how annoying that was. Like, if you get up close to them, it's very difficult to do damage to them. Even if you do use Witch Time, if you're using Bayonetta, it can be very hard to even get a basic PKP combo off, simply because her Witch Time duration is greatly shortened from what it was in the first game. To get that kind of duration, you have to land a perfect parry with the Moon of Mahakala, which is obviously not something that you're going to do very often. The reduced Witch Time duration, in combination with the increased reliance on it, is kind of what causes the problem with this game, especially with the humanoid bosses. And then you have a lot of these bigger enemies here where you just can't stagger them at all outside of Witch Time or Umbrum Climax. Sorry, that word's kind of hard to say, but those things just kind of make the game not as enjoyable as it should be. I think overall, the pacing of the game is great. It is a much smoother playthrough than the first game is, especially after that game has aged almost a decade. It definitely has shown its age. A lot of the design choices and stuff, like the bike level and the missile level, just dragging on too long. This game doesn't have any of that. Basically, the mini-games are very short. I think the mini-games maybe contribute, I'd say, 10 minutes of the game in general, and I think even less than that. Like, they don't contribute much to the overall playthrough at all, but they're actually quite fun, and they don't overstay their welcome. So that part of the game is much better than it was in the first game. But all these little small changes they made with the combat really just make it not as enjoyable of an experience in terms of the raw combat. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stop there. I'm not really, I'm basically just echoing stuff that's been said for the 3.5, 4 years since this game has been out. But now that we've got confirmation of a Bayonetta 3, I just kind of wanted to bring light to my personal opinion, which is pretty much the same as everyone else's. I just wasn't really able to really agree or disagree since I had such limited experience with the game. But now that I have about 16 hours in the game and I finished it, and I've done most of the challenges, I've still got a couple cars left, a couple unlockables, I can honestly say that everyone's pretty much been right, and we all really hope that Bayonetta 3 is going to have a better balance. They have not said who's directing it. I know Hashimoto directed this game, and Kamiya did the first one, so maybe Kamiya will direct this one, you know, Bayonetta 3, or he'll have more supervision over it, and he'll kind of ensure that the combat is going to be better overall. Anyway, I just thought I'd give my thoughts on the game, and I'll catch you guys later. Hopefully by the time you guys see this, the direct will have happened, and we'll get some confirmation on Bayonetta 3. I'll definitely make a video on that as well. Catch you guys later. Peace.